What's God taught you about forgiveness?
That, as you said, there's a freedom in it. When I was forgiven and I experienced that forgiveness, it freed me up inside to...
On February 3rd, 1998, Karla Faye Tucker was executed by lethal injection at the Huntsville unit in Texas. The method was clinical, sterile, and final. But as controversial as it was, it still didn't compare to the crime that got her there. Tucker had spent 15 years on death row for an act that stunned investigators and devastated two families. She became the first woman executed in Texas since 1863. Yet the most chilling detail of her crime, that she experienced intense sexual orgasmic pleasure during the brutal Pickaxe murders, stood in grotesque contrast to the woman who would later plead for life as a born-again Christian. Born-again Christian, model prisoner, transformed soul. That's how the media painted her final years. But before the conversion, before the Clemency campaigns, there were the Pickaxe murders. Two brutal killings that would haunt everyone involved. Born on November 18, 1959, Karla Faye Tucker's life was chaos from the start. Her childhood was a blueprint for disaster. Dysfunction ran through every corner of her family. Her mother struggled with addiction. Her father wasn't around much. The household was unstable, violent, unpredictable. By her teens, Tucker was already deep into drugs. Heroin, speed, whatever she could get her hands on. The substances became her escape, then her prison. She dropped out of school. Started running with the wrong crowd. Petty theft, prostitution, anything to feed the habit. Violence followed her everywhere. She carried knives, got into fights, developed a reputation on the streets of Houston. Friends describe her as wild, unpredictable, dangerous when high. The drugs didn't just numb her pain, they amplified her rage. Tucker's criminal record grew steadily through the early 1980s. Burglary, theft, drug possession. She was in and out of jail, but never for long enough to break the cycle. Each arrest was followed by release, each release by another crime. By June 1983, Tucker was a 23-year-old addict with nothing to lose. She'd been using drugs for nearly a decade. June 13, 1983, Houston, Texas. The heat was suffocating, the kind that made everything feel heavy and desperate. Tucker wasn't alone that night. Daniel Ryan Garrett was with her, another addict, another criminal looking for easy money. They'd been using drugs for hours, their judgment clouded, their inhibitions gone. The target was Jerry Lynn Dean, 27 years old, recently separated from his wife. Dean had been the victim of motorcycle theft months earlier, and word on the street was that he might know who took it. But that wasn't why Tucker and Garrett were interested in him. They wanted his motorcycle, his money, whatever they could steal. Dean lived in a small apartment in Houston. He'd been out the night before, June 12th, at a pool party. He'd met someone there, a woman named Deborah Ruth Thornton, 32 years old, married, mother of two. She decided to spend the night at Dean's place. Neither of them knew what was coming. Tucker and Garrett had been watching Dean's apartment. They knew he had valuable items inside. Motorcycles, electronics, cash. They also knew he had access to the apartment key. No need for forced entry. Just walk in, take what they wanted, get out. Dean and Thornton were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Innocent people caught in the crosshairs of someone else's criminal intent. Tucker and Garrett entered Dean's apartment in the early morning hours of June 13th. They walked in like they belonged there. Dean was asleep in his bed. Thornton was beside him. Both were completely unaware of the danger that had just entered their lives. Tucker and Garrett moved through the apartment quietly at first, looking for valuables, gathering what they could steal. Then Dean woke up. He heard something. Movement in his apartment. He made a sound, a gurgling noise, trying to wake up fully, trying to understand what was happening. That sound triggered something in Tucker. The drugs, the adrenaline, the criminal mindset, they all collided in that moment. Tucker grabbed a 3-foot pickaxe that was in the apartment. What happened next was savage, brutal, beyond comprehension. She attacked Dean with the pickaxe, striking him repeatedly. Blood sprayed across the walls. Dean's body convulsed with each blow. Deborah Thornton woke up to witness Dean's murder. She saw the blood, the violence, the horror. She knew she was next. Tucker turned on her with the same pickaxe, the same rage, the same brutal intent. The attack was frenzied, merciless, final. When it was over, the pickaxe was left embedded in Thornton's heart. Tucker and Garrett didn't flee immediately. They took their time. They stole Dean's motorcycle, his El Camino, his wallets, anything of value they could find. The apartment was a crime scene, but they treated it like a shopping mall. 2 people were dead, but they were focused on the profit. There was no evidence of forced entry because they had used a key. No broken locks, no shattered windows, no signs of struggle at the door. They had walked in like invited guests and turned the place into a slaughterhouse. The next morning, Dean's coworker arrived to check on him. Dean hadn't shown up for work, hadn't called in, hadn't answered his phone. That wasn't like him. The coworker knocked on the door. No answer. He tried the door. It was unlocked. What he found inside was a scene of absolute horror. 2 bodies, both repeatedly stabbed with a pickaxe. Blood everywhere. Signs of a struggle. Evidence of theft. The coworker immediately called police. Houston Police Department responded quickly. Homicide detectives arrived within hours. The crime scene was processed methodically, but the investigation faced immediate challenges. Who were the killers? How did they get in? What was the motive? The answers would come, but not quickly enough for the families of the victims. The witnesses started talking. Neighbors heard screaming around 3 a.m. Others saw strangers in the complex that night. Dean's motorcycle was missing. His El Camino too. The wallets were gone, but jewelry remained untouched. The investigation revealed Dean's connections to Houston's criminal underworld. Motorcycle theft, drug deals, dangerous associations. But Deborah Thornton had no criminal history. She was an innocent victim. Wrong place, wrong time. The detectives knew they were hunting killers who didn't discriminate. Physical evidence mounted fast. Hair samples, fiber analysis, blood typing. The Houston PD lab worked around the clock. Every piece of evidence pointed to 2 suspects. The case was building. Justice was coming. The breakthrough came from Tucker's own mouth. Police wiretaps captured everything. She couldn't stop talking about the murders, bragging to friends, describing the killings in graphic detail. The recordings were damning. Tucker described how Dean's gurgling sounds enraged her, how she grabbed the pickaxe and struck repeatedly, how Deborah Thornton woke up and saw Dean dying, how Tucker turned on her next. The confession was chilling in its casual brutality. The arrests came swift. Tucker and Garrett were taken into custody separately. Neither resisted. Both seemed almost relieved to be caught. The investigation had consumed Houston PD for weeks. Now they had their killers. In the interrogation room, Tucker continued confessing. She admitted later that killing gave her sexual pleasure, that the violence excited her. Detectives had seen many killers, but Tucker's lack of remorse was startling. She showed no empathy for the victims, no understanding of what she'd taken from their families. Garrett's arrest followed the same pattern. He confessed his role, described the planning, the burglary gone wrong. July 1984 brought the verdicts. Guilty on all counts. Capital murder. The sentences came next. Death by lethal injection. Tucker became the youngest woman on Texas death row. She was 24 years old. Her life of crime had reached its inevitable conclusion. The judge's gavel fell with finality. Justice had been served. But the real story was just beginning. Tucker would spend the next 14 years on death row. And in that time, she would become something nobody expected. A born-again Christian whose transformation would divide a nation. Death row changed Karla Tucker completely. The transformation started slowly at first. Bible studies with the prison chaplain, prayer meetings, reading scripture. But this wasn't jailhouse religion. This was something deeper. Tucker's conversion began in 1985, just 1 year after her death sentence. The woman who once bragged about murder was now spending hours in prayer. Prison officials noticed the change immediately. No more violence. No more outbursts. The rage was gone. In 1995, Tucker married Dana Brown, a prison minister who had counseled her for years. Tucker had found love and purpose in the darkest place imaginable. Prison records show Tucker's complete behavioral transformation. From violent sociopath to gentle Christian. She mentored other inmates, led Bible studies, became a positive influence on death row. Guards who had feared her now respected her. The change was real behind prison walls. The question was whether it mattered anymore. Skeptics remained throughout the entire ordeal. Was this genuine transformation or calculated performance? Tucker's critics argued she was manipulating the system, playing reformed Christian to save her life. The debate would rage for years. The 1990s brought unprecedented attention to Tucker's case. Her prison transformation captured national headlines. Religious leaders rallied to her cause. Human rights advocates joined the fight. This wasn't typical death row coverage. International pressure mounted against Texas authorities. Pope John Paul II personally intervened. The Vatican sent a letter requesting clemency. The Pope's involvement elevated the case. The clemency campaign was unlike anything Texas had seen. Thousands of letters flooded the governor's office. Prayer vigils were held outside prisons. Religious leaders from multiple denominations united. The pressure was immense on officials, but victims' families remained unmoved by pleas. They wanted justice, not mercy from courts. Governor Bush would have the final say. Tucker's team presented their case very methodically. Prison records showed her complete transformation. Guard testimony supported her character change. Educational achievements proved her rehabilitation efforts. The evidence of change was overwhelming. But would it be enough for clemency? December 1997 brought the final disappointing verdict. The board voted unanimously against any clemency. Bush announced his decision shortly after that. No commutation would be granted at all. Tucker would face execution as originally scheduled. The announcement stunned all of Tucker's supporters. They had believed transformation would save her. Religious leaders expressed deep disappointment publicly. But Texas law was crystal clear. January 1998 marked the final countdown period. The execution date was officially set. February 3rd was the chosen date. 32 days remained for Tucker. The most-watched death row case was ending. Last meal requests surprised everyone. A banana. A fresh peach. A garden salad with ranch dressing. Simple. Even in death, Tucker maintained her transformed character. The meal reflected everything Tucker had become. No excess. No indulgence. The woman who once lived for drugs and violence now chose simplicity. Prison officials noted the request. It was unlike any they'd seen from death row inmates. Execution witnesses were finalized. Prison preparation intensified. Media areas were secured. Protesters gathered outside. The execution chamber was inspected. 4 lines tested. Chemicals verified. Everything had to be perfect. The world was watching. Tucker spent her final hours in prayer. She wrote final letters to family members. Prison officials documented her every action. The woman remained composed, peaceful, ready. Her transformation would face its ultimate test. At 5 p.m., the final procedures began. Tucker was moved to the holding cell adjacent to the execution chamber. The last phase of her life was beginning. In 90 minutes, Karla Tucker would be dead. 6:45 p.m. February 3rd, 1998. The witnesses entered the viewing room. Tucker was already strapped to the gurney. 4 lines inserted. The lethal injection was minutes away. History was about to be made. The warden asked Tucker for her final statement. Her voice was clear, strong, unwavering. "Yes, sir, I would like to say to all of you, the Thornton family and Jerry Dean's family, that I am so sorry. I hope God will give you peace with this." She turned to her husband. "Baby, I love you." Her final words carried no self-pity, no anger, only love and remorse. The transformation was complete. The lethal injection began at 6:45 p.m. Sodium pentothal flowed through the 4 lines. Tucker's eyes fluttered closed. Her breathing slowed, then stopped. At 6:45 p.m., Karla Faye Tucker was pronounced dead. The first woman executed in Texas since 1863 was gone. The Pickaxe killer had found peace. Her 15-year journey from monster to martyr was over. Death had claimed its due. The woman who committed unspeakable evil found God behind bars. Whether that transformation was genuine remains debated. But Karla Tucker's execution marked a turning point. In Texas justice, in American debates about death and redemption, her story continues to divide opinion decades later.